Okay, so let's say your colors are getting out of control, but let's also say you're getting too many layers in here and you don't really care about these other ones. Well, let's go ahead and we'll just save out a new copy by going to File, Save As, and let's say that this is following a convention, maybe, hopefully. So it would be 9-Greenberg-Eric, because I'm Eric Greenberg. And we'll call this one 01 for the first one. And once that one's saved, we'll come on in and we'll do another Save As. And we're going to call this a new iteration, 02, so we can keep track of it. And then I'm just going to delete everything I'm not using. Bloop. Wow, that shrank that down. We're down to 40 megabytes. So I've got a smart object that's just a flattened layer of everything else. No going back now without opening up a new file. But I've got too much color happening. So I'm going to play around with using the HDR Toning under Image Adjustments, HDR Toning. HDR Toning will flatten the document. Are you sure you want to proceed? Well, gosh, I guess that's okay because we're in a brand new document altogether. So what is HDR toning? It's high dynamic range. It means that you're trying to maximize the tonal range inside of an image. So let's take a look at something like our flower here, which is actually already pretty good. The idea is that if you had something with really dark darks and you focused on that, everything else, when you're taking your photo, everything else would be blown out because now the lens is having to open up so much to bring in light that everything else is just too bright. So if you focus on something that's very bright, the lens will close up, right? As it goes. And what do I mean by close up? It won't be open as long with the number of f-stops there. Or you have a more sensitive film so that it doesn't have to be open as long as you can still get a lot of detail. There's a less sensitive film. Sorry. So when the bright light comes in, it doesn't adjust it as much. It doesn't affect it as much. There we go. Or you could have a very sensitive film in a dark area and that would bring in all the darks but blow everything else out. So what do? You want a high dynamic range. You want something that has details in the light areas and the dark areas. Now, Photoshop can try to fake that, and it won't always be very good, but it will still be something. So we could do some HDR toning, and wow, you can see by default it did not do particularly good work. So what are these methods? We have exposure and gamma, which will probably work out a little bit better. So it will try to control the areas that are exposed, and then our gamma range, which is just the non-linear lighting, the non-linear luminance values. Ooh, all right. So in other words, if you had like a logarithmic curve, which is kind of what light follows when it's falling off, you can increase or decrease that. So sure enough, it looks like the light falls off much faster as we decrease the gamma, or the light doesn't fall off at all if we increase the gamma. So this is usually better for decreasing it to create an effect as though it's not as directly lit. So that's with exposure and gamma. You've got highlight compression, which will just try to compress the highlights. Good luck with that. Histogram equalization, which will go across the entire histogram and try to even it out by darkening the brights and brightening the darks. So that tends to not be super great. And then you have local adaptation, which is, I think, more fun. So you have the radius, in other words, how wide the pixels are. This is the edge glow. The strength of that glow, we may not want very much at all. So I'm just going to knock this down and hope I don't crash out Photoshop. Here we go. Let's just do 1. There we go. You have tone and detail. Again, gamma is how quick the fall off is. So if we crank it in one direction, the fall off isn't working very well in the light, and too far the other way, it's overdone. And then you have exposure, which we're going to need to kick down. Here we go. Now we can adjust things a little bit more easily. The more exposed an image is, theoretically, the lighter it would be, but in this case, it's making stuff up, so good luck with that. Detail, how much detail it's trying to preserve, and it's basing things off of thresholds, tolerance differences, and that sort of thing within the image. I'm not 100% clear on what methodology and algorithms Photoshop's using for this, so I'm vaguely saying thresholds, which just means the drop off between things, that sort of stuff. Now in the advanced section, You have your shadow, which you can increase and decrease. We're not going to see a big difference in this particular image. The highlight, however, should, yeah, there we go. Vibrance, well, we remember vibrance. Something with less vibrance is essentially desaturated. It's increasing a posterization style effect on each individual channel and blurring it out a bit. You have saturation itself, so we can increase, decrease it. But even more than that, voila, we have a curves-like effect. And if we adjust it wildly, we'll see that it is similar to curves, but not quite. It has more to do, if I drag this up, it has more to do with how it's applying these effects across the range. So if right now we're not applying it to the darks, but we are applying it to the lights, and we could go the other direction. Where can we go in the other direction without adding more points? It may not like that. Now we'll do weird effects in the dark, but it should not do any, I'm still messing up the lights. There we go. Now it shouldn't do particularly many effects in the lights. It's still trying to follow the standard 45-degree angle here, but the darks, it's doing some crazy stuff. And in fact, let's see if I can adjust it a little bit more. There we go. Apply more of the effect in the darks than the lights, and we're getting that. Excellent. Oh, look, you can flip things around. Well, that's convenient. Nice. All right. I did not remember that you could do that. Okay. Oh, and you have a cornering effect. Nice. So notice now we can completely isolate, for example, the darker areas and just do our application of effects to the light areas. That is really convenient. Okay, so if you hit corner while you have it on, boom, you get a 45-degree angle on it. If you need to get rid of it, you can pull it off screen, or you can click it once and press delete. Same process as you would with a curve. That is wildly convenient. All right, well, that's good to know. Okay, and so that's essentially what HDR Toning is doing, and it's pretty fake looking, especially, well, I don't know, it had some interesting effects. But sometimes a subtle touch on it will allow you to get some pretty good effects. Let's try it on something a little zanier. Filter adjustments, HDR toning. Okay, so now we know that the first thing we want to hit up is exposure. Do we want to try to get in more details? Oh, that's pretty interesting. Now the gamma drop off, again, it's essentially how quick the light is dropping off. Ugh, don't like that too much. There we go. Do we want to bring in the shadows? Close up the shadows? Do we want the highlights more open, less open? Do we want more vibrance? Why not? Desaturate? Well, that's convenient. We could get rid of some of our saturation issues right away. And then we can do a curves adjustment on the whole thing. All right, I don't like that very much, but that still exists. I'm going to go ahead and actually crank up the saturation to something insane. All right, so here we have this effect. I'm going to try just an invert. Control I. Now I think that's more interesting. Now we might be getting something. Now watch out though. Remember early on I was talking about how you want to be careful about having stuff in the middle. This is flat out in the middle. So what's something that we could do? Well, we could duplicate it and we could just, transform it. Now, I don't want pixels flying off everywhere like what's going on here. So I'm just going to grab the crop tool and crop the image. Boom. Boom. And as long as I have delete cropped pixels, oh, I've damaged the opacity by accidentally clicking 30 on the top. Let me turn that back up. So as I have delete cropped pixels, voila. I've got some interesting effects going on now. And I could do some crazy stuff like hard light, vivid light, that kind of thing. But doing this means probably coming in and doing some color adjustments. These colors are going out of control, which is not something I want in your final image. So do watch out for that. That said, some of them are pretty interesting. All right, I'm going to leave it at this, and I will see you in the next video.